Hello, David here, and the project for today is evaluating the alternator that I took out of my Ford. It was a 98 Ford Contour with a 2.5 liter V6 motor, and I want to see why it failed. The reason why I have the alternator is I bought a brand new alternator. If you buy a rebuilt alternator, you have to turn in your old alternator for a core deposit so they can rebuild the old alternator. Since this alternator takes several hours to get out and get in, I decided to get the new alternator because my luck with remanufactured alternators has not been that good. They never last more than a year. This one lasted 7 years. So this is a 3G series alternator for Ford. They were made from about 1991 to 2003. You can identify a 3G alternator by the voltage regulator that's on the back, and there's no external cooling fins. Most alternators have cooling fins on the front. They come in two versions. There's a 95 amp version and a 130 amp version. You can tell the 130 amp version by the number of holes between these two ribs right here. When there's two holes between the ribs, it's a 130 amp. If there's 4 holes between these two ribs, it's a 95 amp. So there's 4 things that could go wrong on an alternator. The windings of the copper wire goes around the outside of the, it goes around the shaft, so you can actually see them through the holes in here. They are around the inside of the case. See them in there. They're there. It's not likely that those wires would break anyway. The other thing that could be is the diodes could be bad. I can't check for diodes because I don't have the expertise in electronics to check diodes, but inside the alternator there is a board of diodes that can make your alternator go bad. The other thing that could make an alternator go bad is the bearings. The bearings can either seize, so the rotor doesn't turn, or the bearings could be bad, where they make a lot of noises and not spin freely. And I don't think that's the case in this one, because as you can see, this spins freely. It's not making any noise. I can't feel any grinding or anything while it's turning. The other thing that could be is the brushes. And the brushes are attached to the voltage regulator. So I'm going to remove the brushes just to have a peek at those. There are 4 screws. They look like Torx bits that are holding them on. I'm going to take those off. And these take a T20 Torx bit. See what we got here. Here's one brush right here. Does not look excessively worn. But there should be another brush on this side. Get that wire out of there. Whoop, something just popped out. Here's the other brush right there. It's worn, but not excessively worn. Let's see what popped away. Well, I cannot find what flew away, So my guess is either the voltage regulator is bad, or this sleeve that acts like a commutator, that could be worn down to the point where it may not be functioning anymore. There are some spots in there that seem to have lost its finish. I don't know if that's corrosion or if it went too deep. See if I can scratch it. Seems to be copper color underneath that stain. Well, I found the other part that went flying. It was this spring, which matches this spring. So these two springs ride in there, but I don't know how they interact with the brushes. Brushes ride something like that, unless, does a brush ride in here? Aha! That could explain the two tracks on the sleeve. One rides here and one rides there. However, this wire the wires for the brushes are really not long enough. Let's see if I could get this over. I could see a channel. There's a channel on the side right there, which would give room for the wire. Well, they sure don't give you much wire, but it fits. And I think it's because the wire rides low in that channel. So this fits in here like this, and then what you're supposed to do is retract it in there, put a paper clip in there so that when you reassemble it first, and then after you screw the voltage regulator in place, pull out the paper clip. The paper clip has to be straightened, of course, and that's how it's reassembled. And that's why that thing went flying, because that spring was loaded. So there's one, here's the other. It's a great project if you have three hands. Okay, they're both loaded. That's how it goes. Just like that. So this alternator either has a problem with the sleeve, the voltage regulator, or one or more of the diodes. I did some research on the internet and I found a place that sells replacement parts so you can rebuild your own alternator. And the place is called Alternator Starter Rebuild Kits.com. They're not a sponsor. I'm in no way related with them. They're the only place on the internet that I could find that sells replacement parts. And what you get is the regulator, two bearings, the pulley nut and a washer, and then you get the sleeve that the brushes ride on. Had I known about this in advance, I would have tried to rebuild this myself because I had another car to drive. I spent about $230 on that new alternator, and it would have been an interesting challenge spend the $29 on this kit to rebuild it. So I think I'm going to keep the alternator on hand in case I decide to rebuild it at some later date. Definitely a big savings in money. Plus you get new parts, and the company says if it put the kit in and you find out it's not putting out voltage, it's probably a diode, and they have diode boards available. I don't know what the price is. The company said that this rebuild kit is good for the 95 amp alternator and the 130 amp alternator. Those parts are the same. They also have a how-to video on how to do the replacement parts, which I think ought to be helpful. This collar, that when I was a kid we used to call it a commutator when we were fixing up motors. They have a different name for it. They call it a slip ring. So the slip ring is the word for what a commutator is. Looks like they have rebuilt kits for other model alternators as well. So if you feel frisky and want to rebuild your own alternator or starter, I recommend checking out Alternator Starter Rebuildkits.com. They say if you put it together and it's still not putting out any voltage, you can call them on the phone. They'll be happy to talk to you. You can send them your alternator and they'll take a look at it and give you an assessment, no charge. You can decide if you want, or they'll give you a refund if you want to give the parts back. They'll fix it for a charge, all those, or they will send it back to you and you can fix it. Of course, these things are heavy, so freight would be a consideration. I don't know where they're located. So what I'm going to do is put this back together and keep it for a while, see if I'm going to need it at some point in the future. The new alternator that I bought from Napa has a lifetime guarantee, so if it goes out, I'll just take it back to Napa. And I've got the pin in here so that I can reassemble these brushes. Don't try to use a toothpick, the diameter is too wide. You do have to straighten out a paper clip to get that part back in there. Oh, by the way, those wires from the slip ring have to be soldered in place. So you need a soldering gun in order to put that slip ring in. Get the old slip ring out. You have to cut the old wires, pry out the slip ring, and then gently press in the new slip ring and solder those wires in place. Pull the pin, set the brushes. Put this baby in storage. I want to thank you guys for watching, considering hitting like, subscribing, hit the bell, and all that other good stuff. See you later. Bye now.